Hello everybody, it's George from Ireland. So welcome back to my channel. And in this, I'm commenting on Labour's imposition of value added tax, VAT, on school fees. Okay, that's only for independent schools. The majority of schools in the United Kingdom are state schools. As I say, they're funded through taxation. Although I think this tax might only apply in England. I'm quite confused, because His Majesty's government controls some things for the UK in its entirety, some things for England only because of devolution. The devolved administrations in Belfast, Edinburgh, and Cardiff do certain things their own way. And some taxes for the UK as a whole, others for the four nations of the United Kingdom, for want of a better word. Certainly, this is kicking in England because only 7% of children go to independent schools, though as you go up to sixth form, it's higher than that. Now, some areas it's much higher. London's over 20%. Edinburgh's quite high. There'll be some areas like Northeast England, which rather lower. Um, so this is just spite. It is sheer class warfare. It's envy, hating people because you can't afford what someone else can afford. And I always perceived myself as a have. I remember about 2007, for the first time, perceiving myself as a have-not and seeing it from that angle, the people with the Chelsea tractors. And I did feel a bit of that covetousness in myself. If I can't have it, I don't want them to have it. And it's a nasty and dishonorable feeling. It's one that people should suppress within themselves. You should admire and aspire and not resent people. So parents who make major sacrifices to send their children to independent school are very public spirited. They're paying this out of taxed income. They're paying for their children's education twice over, once through the tax system and then again through fees. And some other affluent, in some cases very affluent. Fine, well done them. It doesn't reflect discredit on them that they've made a lot of money. And in fairness, occasionally they've just been lucky, and that's patrimony rather than these are earnings. But it plays well to Labour's bigotry. So prejudice is alive and well in the Labour Party. I remember some children years ago in the Blair era, the sort of moderate Blair era, from independent school who sang something at a Labour conference were aggressively booed. Wow, booing children just because of the sort of school they have to go to. Nauseating, but that's just typical for Labour. And it typifies the whole mindset of entitlement, of hatred against various segments of society whom they've anathematized. So what it will do is put independent schooling out of the reach of middle class families and only for the upper class. So, and there's some of amongst the 93% of children who go to independent schools who are from very wealthy families. I know a highly successful lawyer, his daughters go to state school in London, but of course he's living in an expensive postcode. So if they don't pay fees, they'll just pay a higher mortgage. And they take Holland Park Comprehensive, where that appalling bigot and hypocrite Lord Stansgate, alias Tony Benn, lived. So his children went to a state school, but yeah, an elite one in one of the most expensive areas in London. So as always, do as I say, not as I do. You look at Harriet Harman, you look at Diane Abbott, you look at Tony Blair, absolutely ocean-going hypocrites, you know, going against Labour's own policy. No, I can't blame them for doing their best for their children, but I can blame them for trying to prevent everybody else doing the best for their children. And what will it do? Some schools have already gone bust because of this. So that's St Joseph's Preparatory School in Stoke-on-Trent. This 20% VAT levy, which is taking effect in January 2025, and too many parents can't afford that. And it's a myth that they are all that rich. Their children are on bursaries, on scholarships, 100% bursaries in some cases. The fees are partly so high because they're providing all these bursaries and scholarships. So they are a charity in the great majority of cases. There's some schools that are private in the real sense. They really are shareholders and they make a profit. Majority of schools are charities. Any excess is put back into the school to raise salaries, to improve the facilities, to build a new swimming pool, to upgrade the art department, whatever it may be, some sort of a rainy day fund. And so they're not all eaten. They're not all for the super rich. So education's education. You shouldn't be trying to take away a good education from children just because their parents are making major sacrifices, are really feeling the financial pain to try and do the best for their children. And if you do take away independent schooling effectively, what will they do? They'll pay for private tutors. I mean, are you going to tax that? I mean, probably that would be the next. That'll be the next spite, the next nastiness, and all this money is going to go to state schooling. But it requires a lot more than money. Okay, raising teacher salaries, yes, that's long overdue. But there are also some reasons people don't go into state schooling. don't go into teaching at all, or leaving it in droves. So many drop out with a few years of qualification. The recruitment rate nowhere near meets the retirement rate. I remember seeing this. They got targets to recruit for PGCs, a postgraduate certificate of education. So after a degree, to train to be a teacher, and they have a target for each subject. For history, this is several years ago. There were 160% of the target. 160% recruited way more history teachers than they needed, and the history teacher may then be teaching geography and English and other subjects as well, simply because he or she goes on usually to have qualified teaching status, QTS. And then there are others who then it was like physics, chemistry, IT. They're achieving 60% of the recruitment target. 60. So a massive shortage. Some of those 60 will fail the course, drop out of the course, or else qualify, leave the profession after a few years. So very often the person teaching A-level physics, chemistry, IT does not have a degree in that subject, might be maths or biology or something vaguely allied, did that subject at A-level decades ago, not very confident in it. So there are severe shortages of teachers in STEM subjects. It's partly behavior, it's partly paperwork up to here. They say paperwork's getting worse and worse. It's partly accusations of racism, of sexual abuse, of physical abuse, of anything. It's partly Gove's bigotry, Gove's attempt to oppress, to take away teachers' civil liberties. You can't do this, this, and this. You can't hold certain views. You can't belong to lawful organizations. You can't speak your mind. You can't do anything. You can't have a private life. Anything which doesn't accord with his sort of puritanical code, and you can't do it. This is a man who took Class A drugs in his 30s. But if you're a 21-year-old trainee teacher, if you take cannabis once, that's it. You're struck off for life. You can never ever work with a minor. How come the most junior teacher can't have possessed cannabis once, but the person in charge of the entire system, Michael Gove, bought Class A drugs on numerous occasions when he was well into adulthood? The hypocrisy and the illogicality of it is just nauseating. But that's just typical. And don't expect any improvement in Labour. There'll be more imposition of their ideology. There'll be more attempts to brainwash children with their liberal left worldview, and to make people hate their own country, to think that Britain is utterly racist, that the British Empire was absolutely evil, and so on. So in no other country would people be taught to be revolted by their national identity and believe that they come from nowhere. So it's just getting worse and worse. I'm sorry, I wish I could see a light on the end of the tunnel, but I don't. The increase in salaries is a tiny step in the right direction, but there are just so many other problems, and the class size is more and more bad behavior to be put up with. Education secretaries lasted a year and a half on average under the last Conservative government. Maybe Labour improved on that one. Bridget Phillipson has never taught a day in her life, has absolutely no idea what she's talking about. Now, the teaching unions tend not to be quite so hostile to Labour as they are to the Conservatives, but no doubt soon they'll be abusing it with the foulest word in their lexicon, Tory. So yeah, she's a sworn opponent of children's rights. She's an advocate of violence against children. She is a danger to children, and that's the person they put in charge of schools. Well, it really is sickening, but I'm sorry to say, totally unsurprising. But anyway, I advise people not to go into teaching or anything like that, because it was a very agreeable lifestyle a generation or two ago, but it's just got worse and worse, and it's just not worth the stress, sadly. And I don't know what's going to happen in the outcome. There are people who are good at it, who suit it, but they just don't receive the respect or the remuneration that they so richly deserve. For that level of aggro, they got to be paid far, far more. Parents getting involved, criticize them, saying things are not good enough. The curriculum changes every single year. Teachers just learn how to teach one system, and then it changes again. Remember a couple of years ago, some agency phoned me up, would I teach English in a comprehensive school? And I said, well, I don't even have a QTS, a PGC. That doesn't matter. Would you want to be a teacher in the school? I said, don't you mean classroom assistant? They said, no, 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 class teacher. I mean, I said no. How desperate were they? Because previously the idea is if you didn't have PGC, you didn't count, you didn't exist. But they're so desperate they'll do that. Otherwise, the state system would have collapsed years ago. So somehow that's okay. Of course, Eton's not a school at all, not according to the leftist statist mindset, because certainly when I was there, 9 out of 10 teachers had no teaching qualification whatsoever, yet somehow it got outstanding results. So it just shows that the more paperwork, you make it worse, not better. With hyper-regulation, the state has actually ruined state education long ago, and is proceeding to do it to the independent sector. It's all about generating reams and reams of documentation. Filling out all these forms is utterly futile. This is no use to anyone. Make work for jobs worth, more administration, more taxation, to have more of these pen pushing roles, to take away from the actual role. So I despair. It's just there's no sign it's ever getting better. Sadly, British education, which certainly at the elite level used to be world class, in some ways has just got worse and worse. So it's deeply dispiriting. Yeah, that's it. Private tuition. I suppose that's the only good thing is parents say we can't afford 30 grand now, it was 25 grand, now it's 30 grand or whatever for independent school, but we can afford private tuition. So we'll put some of the money into that. And more independent schools will go bust. And there's no reason to believe that these independent school teachers are all, or even mostly, going to go into the state sector, which is even worse in terms of paperwork, behavior, class sizes, and so on. Right. Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe on Patreon today, on PayPal. Goodbye.